Are you ready for a new opportunity? I've been in marketing for 20 years and it's changed a lot, but it doesn't have to be complicated. I want to help you grow your business. The world is changing every day and you need marketing that works. Go to my website at scafarms.com and click the link Grow My Business. If you need help with your online marketing, your website, developing email programs, or putting your own shows together, go to my website at scafarms.com and click the link Grow My Business. Thanks for listening and enjoy this next episode.
Get ready for this.
Wow, I am blown away by the response I've been getting on Facebook.
Welcome to a brand new episode of
The Upstate's Farmers Market Podcast.
The following program is for adult audiences only.
You are listening to
Hey y'all, thanks for having me on the Farmers Market Podcast.
Relax and Enjoy.
We are one of the few tea growing farms in the United States.
Hi, this is Chris Thurman from BioWay Farm.
Hi, this is Kristen with Earth and Organic.
Hi, this is Mark Jones from Cedar Falls Farm.
Thanks for listening. And now your host.
Great day, everybody. My name is Stefan, and you're listening to the Farmers Market Podcast, the show that talks to farmers, homesteaders, beekeepers, craft makers, and much, much more right here in the upstate of South Carolina. We keep it fresh. We keep it local. Here we talk about all things farmers market related. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, and become a supporter of scafarms.com. It's the home base for My Farm Online and the Farmers Market Podcast. Please share with all your friends on Facebook and other social channels, and let me know if there's a local farmer that you would like to hear on the show. Now, today's guest, he is a big family man. He's an owner of a 48-acre farm just off of the banks of the Reedy River and has a mighty fine view. He loves his chickens, and he's living out a dream of his. Welcome to the show, Mark Jones with Cedar Falls Farm.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I appreciate you having me on your show today.
Not a problem. We appreciate you being here. Now, you can find Mark and Cedar Falls Farm at cedarfallsfarm.com. Now, tell me, Mark, take us on a walk at Cedar Falls Farm and what's happening on the farm right now.
Well, as you said, we have 48 acres nestled on the Reedy River. We're down in the Fort Shoals community on the Fountain Inn address. We're about probably 10 miles outside of the town of Fountain Inn. It's a nice rural area. And we have maybe 28 acres open. It was a former horse farm that we've slowly been converting over to a working farm. We do produce. We have chickens. We have bees. We try to get honey when it's possible, but our focus is on the lives of the bees first and then honey second. And we just enjoy the rural life and, you know, moved out of the city subdivision living some years ago to get back to the roots.
Now, what did you do prior to farming?
Well, I still do that. I actually work with Michelin Tire here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a materials design guarantor. I've been with Michelin 28 years, and I'm actually on the countdown now. At the end of the first quarter next year, I'll be retiring and farming full-time. So I've been farming for the last 3 years in addition to my work at Michelin full-time.
You've had a tough job at Michelin, and now you're taking on even a tougher job.
Yeah, you know, it's tough doing both at the same time, but it's as you know, being a farmer as well, it's a labor of love. It's something you love to do. It gets into your blood, and there's something primordial about providing food and providing good quality food to people. You know, we pasture raise our chickens. We didn't start out that way, but we evolved to that, and it's there's a little more loss with it with the predators because you can't protect them in enclosures all day long, but we're giving people high quality by doing that.
And how many chickens now? How many chickens do you have?
We're up close to 300. The last batch I ordered 100 chicks, and they're about 4 weeks old now, and I'll probably sell off half of those. But we have to bring new chickens in periodically to help infuse, you know, as some get older and we lose some to predators. We're trying to keep the egg laying going. But this time of year, it starts to drop off. We were getting about 8 dozen a day, and now with the shorter days and with molting taking place, we're probably down to about 4 or 5 dozen a day. But we're trying to hold around 200 chickens at any given time.
Oh, wow. Now, do you have a certain variety or a certain breed that you have on the farm, or do you have multiple ones?
We have multiple. We have some focused varieties. A couple of favorites that we have are ISA Browns, which is it was developed in France probably about 30 years ago. They're very similar to Golden Comets. They lay about maybe 300 to 320 eggs a year in large to extra large size. And then we go with Golden Comets. You get about 300 eggs a year out of those. We have some Barred Rock, Americana, which lay the colored eggs. You'll get blue-green looking eggs from them. And we have Australorps. And there's a small smattering of other breeds in there, just different things. We've done some rescue breeds, I'd call it, when people have not been able to take care of their flocks. We'll take them at the farm, bring them in, and isolate them for a week or two to make sure they're disease-free. And then we introduce them to the flocks and let them be able to roam the pastures during the day.
Now, I'm very familiar with the Golden Comets. We've had those as well. We've also had the Australorps. Actually, the Australorps aren't laying anymore. We've had them for about 3 or 4 years, and my wife just won't let me get rid of them. She loves them so much. I'm trying. I'm really trying. But we've had a lot of success with Gold Star. Are you familiar with that breed?
I'm not as familiar with that, no.
They may be similar to, I think they're very similar to what you mentioned earlier that's related to the Golden Comet, but they were the great layers. And I believe it was a farm out of Duncan that he was kind of weaning out his flock, and we picked up a few from him, and they were prolific layers. I mean, they were 2 a day for a good straight while. I mean, they're the only ones producing. The Australorps aren't producing anymore. But so you've got a ton of chickens, and you're selling.
We do.
Pasture. I mean, they are pasture chickens, pasture hens. But I think I read somewhere that you keep them out on the pasture for about 12 hours a day. Is that right?
It'll get typically about 12 to 14 hours a day. And Stefan, it depends on the time of year. Like right now, it's getting dark earlier, so the chickens go back to roost. So I have one pasture attached to the barn, and I've converted 2 old horse stalls into coop and roosting area, so they can go in and lay, and they have a roosting area and feeders inside and water inside as well as outside. When they go in, I go down and close everything up, refill everything, take care of them. And the upper pasture, it's probably about 1.5 acres or something like that, and they'll go into what was a run-in shed for horses. I drug it probably 100 yards with my tractor out of the pasture over to that pasture, and we converted it into a coop, enclosed it, and it's nice. So they get as much time exposure as there is daylight.
Wow.
And at night, we have to close them up because we've got owls, we have foxes, raccoons, opossums, and hawks. There's any number of predators that we have to be on the lookout for. And for the chicken safety and just actually for the well-being of the animals that we're entrusted to care for, we close them up at night to protect them. But they get a lot of outside time. We make certain of that.
That definitely makes sense. Now, did your job at Michelin, did it prepare you for this in any way? I'm trying to figure out, where did Mark get the the idea to go, hey, you know what, we should raise a bunch of chickens?
So I could, Michelin, your mindset and way of thinking at Michelin is very analytical. So you have a process to doing things. It's not haphazard. You get a lot of that from time and experience working with that great company. But I can take you back to when I was a kid. I can go back 50 years. My dad was a Southern Baptist minister, and we had small churches. And his first church was Hillside Baptist Church in the Hillside community in the lower part of Greenville County, not far from where we live now. And we had chickens. And we had chickens when I was a kid because Southern Baptist minister at a small church in the country didn't make a lot of money. So we had probably 30 or 40 chickens that provided eggs and meat. And we also, every year we raised a garden. We canned, we preserved, we froze. So growing up, this was part of my life, was the farm part of it, on a smaller scale, of course, but it was something that always rested in my mind, and it was something I wanted to get back to. And once we started, when Georgiana and I moved out from the suburbs back into the country, it's like, hey, let's start out with a few chickens, and we can have our own fresh eggs. we don't have to buy eggs, and if we have any left over, we can sell those. And it wasn't long until I was having to buy eggs for us because we had a demand for eggs that I couldn't keep up with. and it grew it grew from there. So it's kind of a nice problem to have, where people are wanting your product. And I've tried to grow to keep up with the demand. And it's enjoyable. So, yeah, there's a little bit of preparation in my day job, but there's also some, I'll say, nostalgia from when I was a kid and the way things were as a child. And people all over, I find, are going back to that, trying to get away from so many preservatives, trying to get away from packaged foods, and actually knowing where their food comes from. And when we sell direct from the farm and people come out, if I'm there at the farm, they want to take a tour, I'll put them on the golf cart. Come on, I'll show you what we're doing, what's going on. You can hold a chicken. You can feed chickens. You can tour the farm. I'll ride them up and show them the beehives, ride down to the river. I get away from the farm part of it and just share so people can experience what we experience.
So when did you get into the bees, or were the bees just a part of it as well? Because I have a terrible bee story that will probably make a lot of people not want to do bees. And I don't have bees on my farm, although I know they are hugely and massively beneficial to everything we're doing in the garden. But how did you get started with bees?
So it's something that was in the back of my mind for a long time, and I really wanted to do this, and I put it off and put it off. And you may recall about probably 2.5 years ago, Stu and Cedar Anderson in Australia invented this new method of extracting honey, and it's called the flow hive. Now, amongst beekeepers now, you mentioned flow hive, there's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of disagreements in the beekeeping community. Now, all it does is offers a way of extracting directly from the hive into a jar. It still requires the same amount of upkeep, the same amount of care, and managing your bees. But it was an easy way for me to start into beekeeping. We bought 2 of those. They were quite expensive. Actually, for one hive, one flow hive at the time, $600. I could probably set up another 3 or 4 hives, good and proper, the Langstroth hives. Wow. So I got into beekeeping through that. I did a lot of studying and preparation beforehand so I could do justice to the bees. And it's gone from there. But being analytical like I am, I couldn't just be happy with doing the flow hives. I bought 2 flow hives, and I said, well, I need to buy 2 Langstroth hives so I can do a head-to-head comparison.
Right.
And I didn't wait a year or 2 to do that. I had to do it that year, and we had packaged bees. I bought those, installed, and we enjoyed it. And we didn't extract our first year. It was a bad year. The weather was terrible. There were droughts, and we ended up going into winter. We lost our bees. And I've learned a lot about disease prevention since, and how to treat your bees, and it's kind of growing on me. I've spent a lot of money getting into this, as I do with most things farming, and don't recoup near as much as I spend yet. That day's coming, right? But it's a passion, It's just a passion. But I've learned some valuable lessons in beekeeping. It's not if you will be stung, it's when you will be stung, and it's how many times you will be stung. Because bees, in the beginning with bees, they're very, I'll say, docile when there's plenty of nectar and there's plenty of pollen, and you're feeding your bees and they're happy. And you finally get to the point, it's like, I really don't need to put these gloves on. Hey, I can do without this veil and this jacket. And some beekeepers are able to do that all the time. They're quite crazy, in my opinion. But right. I thought, well, we're walking by the hives. Why don't I go out here and take the top off and look at them again today and reach and pull a frame? And that one time I went out there just in jacket or in a shirt and shorts, and I took the top off. The bees said, oh, no, we're hungry. Go away. And I didn't go away fast enough, so I got popped a few times. My wife ended up going over to put the lid back on. She got popped. And I have been stung so many times, multiple times in double digits, sometimes working with bees, and you just get to the point that you deal with it.
Well, and I, like I said, I have a horrific story. I'll have to share it with the listeners, but at this moment, I'll just give you the nuts and bolts. Basically, I got stung and ended up in the emergency room, and like I said, oh, it was a nightmare scenario. But there are more details to this story that I'll share right now because it would cover an entire show. But so you've gotten into bees, and you've gotten into bees and gotten into honey, and then you're doing the eggs, the pasture raised hens that are laying, and then you're also doing produce, and you're doing vegetables. I mean, you and I have basically talked shop when we were at the farmer's market. But so, okay, how are you and your wife doing all these different things, and you're working a full-time job?
It's I work. I mean, pretty much I work. Like right now, this evening is a rare evening for me to come out to a restaurant. When we wrap up, I'll go in and join the crowd there. But
that's a hint for me to wrap it up. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. Because I actually enjoy this. I enjoy sharing. I work a lot. You know, it's I work at work. I come home. I work weekends, and I did the farmers market from the first weekend of June until the end of September, and I only missed one weekend, and that was because I had to go to France on business.
Wow.
You know, I enjoy working. It's in my blood. But as I get older, I find out it's a little tougher, and you don't recover quite as quickly. So I'm looking forward to the retirement coming up in March, and then being able to put all of my energy and more focused energy in the farm, because you know as well as I do, you have to take care when you're growing produce. You have to have the right water. You have to keep them weeded. And as you and I talked about the insects and things you have to deal with, and I know you do as we do, trying to go as natural as possible, right, so you're giving your customers the best possible product you can, staying away from the pesticides and all. It's a battle, but I just put in a lot of hours, a whole lot of hours. And we do. I buy a lot of plants locally. I buy seed, and I think you start more with seed and go from it.
I do.
But this past year, I bought a truckload of plants from Woodmont High School's agricultural program here in the upstate, and I'm working with their ag teacher. Again, this year in January, I'll place a large order with them. So it gives me an opportunity to work with ag students to have them to grow vegetables. That's not just going in somebody's garden to put dinner on their table, but to grow a lot that we will plant on our farm and be able to provide for a larger community.
Oh, that's awesome.
Through the farmer's market or through the direct sales. And I've even, one of their students, I'm friends with her mom on Facebook. She's never been on a tractor. She's on the ag program. We had her come out to the farm probably about 3 weeks ago now, maybe 4 weeks ago. And I taught her how to drive a tractor, and then taught her how to bush hog and taught her how to plow. And, you know, she bush hogged a small field for me and then learned how to plow it. And, you know, she's, I believe, a 15-year-old young lady who's never been on a tractor.
Wow.
And she's in her ag program now. She has the experience. So I want to be able to give back a little bit. You know, as we get a little bit from the community, we try to give back a little bit. But we try to provide really good quality produce, and I've got to focus more on the colder weather things as well as the warm weather, because you don't have near the problems with the insects in the cold weather as we do in the warm weather.
No, I totally agree. That's exactly right. And that's amazing that you're working with Woodmont High School. The twist of fate is my son actually went to Woodmont for about 2 years as part of their baccalaureate program. He eventually ended up at Hillcrest High School, but that's an amazing thing that a lot of high schools are doing that. And I see where local farmers could participate and actually encourage young, upcoming farmers to be about not only educating them about what they're doing, but educating them about the process of growing local, fresh, non-GMO. I mean, there's a whole argument out there about that, but just growing produce that you know where it's coming from and you know how it was grown from the seed all the way to the final harvest.
Exactly. It's like all of the cucumbers we sold this year at the market. And I would say probably 90% of the squash that we sold at the market, every one of the peppers we sold at the market were all a product that was started at Woodmont High School in their greenhouse there, and they have a greenhouse I'm jealous of.
Yeah,
it is massive.
Yeah, I know. I've been there. Yeah, it's right there on the backside of the stadium. It's huge.
But we're buying from them. You know, it supports their program. It helps with agricultural education, and it helps us too. I'm getting good quality that I'm able to put out in the garden and know where it came from as well. So I'm pleased. I'm pleased to do that.
No, that's great. I have a special affinity to taking a seed and watching it sprout. So I'm a little different mindset. Although I love transplants. Don't get me wrong. I love transplants that are already there, and you just drop them in the ground. Now, you have a lot of stuff going on at your farm, and I know our listeners are intrigued and they want to know, hey, how can I be a part of Cedar Falls Farm? Is there anything you have for the listeners out there?
Right now, all we really have going on that's available at the farm, we have eggs year-round, which will really start to drop off soon, but we sell direct. Drive out to the farm in the Fort Shoals community. We have eggs available. It's on our front porch. There's a beverage cooler out there. It holds probably 28 dozen eggs at any given time, and prices are marked. We work on the honor system. That's something we believe in the farm community is you know, treating people with respect and until they prove us wrong, and trust. Trust is important. But there's a box out there. You can come and get eggs. And if you listen to this podcast and you hear about Cedar Falls Farm, you want to come out and get some eggs, you can take 50 cents off a dozen. Just put on their podcast. I've got a sign-up sheet. You can put your name, write podcast beside it, and take 50 cents off the price that's marked.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I got a feeling some people are going to take advantage of that. That is great. Now, let me dive into a little deeper question with you, Mark. And are there one or two things that you've learned about life? Obviously, you're transitioning to a different part of your life. It's probably going to be more intense than you thought. But are there one or two lessons from life, maybe as a hardship or a challenge, or maybe something positive that you'd like to share with some of the folks out there?
Well, one thing in particular is don't take everything so serious. None of us are getting out of this alive. And, you know, enjoy yourselves along the way. Make sure that you take time to stop and smell the roses and take time for family and friends. I've lived a busy life, but I've always tried to carve out that time. It doesn't matter how successful you are in life, you really need to take time to take advantage of those moments, to be with family and friends when you can, and let people know when you love them, tell them you love them, respect each other, and just try to make the world a better place, you know, for being in it. It's not about what you leave with, it's what you leave behind, you know, and that's what I want to focus on is making sure that I do something that helps impact people. And when that day comes that I'm called home, people know who Mark Jones was, and they know that he made a difference, because it's not about having your name on buildings and all, as far as I'm concerned. It's about the people local and people close to you. Try to touch lives and make a difference in people's lives.
Wow, that is well said, Mark. And I want to thank you personally for taking the time out and sharing a little bit about you, sharing a little bit about Cedar Falls Farm with us today. I know the listeners are grateful just having listened to you. I'm sure we're going to have you on, but again, thank you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, and look forward to seeing you again.
As well, my friend. Well, be sure to check them out online and share this episode with everybody you know. Your support as a listener is key, and most importantly, support your local farms and farmers. Until the next time, my name is Stefan, and you've been listening to the Farmers Market Podcast. Keep it fresh, keep it local.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.